The proposed capital gains tax changes from Labor's recent budget have got share investors all fired up, and honestly, I can understand why. It's kind of like sitting next to the naughty kid in school and getting dragged to the principal's office with him. And in this case, well, property is the naughty kid because housing has got too expensive in the government's eyes, and shares, they were just sitting there minding their own business, but bam, they have been dragged into the same reforms. So in this video, we are going to break down exactly what the proposed CGT changes are, how they work, who they impact, and of course, some of the potential implications moving forward. This also follows on from my previous deep dive into the proposed negative gearing changes, and there will also be a deep dive into discretionary trust changes coming shortly. Now, before we start, just remember, none of these changes are law yet. They're proposed changes only at this stage, and there's still a political and legislative process ahead of us before anything actually becomes finalised. First of all, what is capital gains tax and how does it currently work? Well, that's pretty simple. Capital gains tax is the tax you pay on the profit you made when you sell an asset for more than its cost base. So for example, if you buy shares for $1,000, you hold them for 5 years, you then sell them for $1,500, you have made a capital gain of $500. Under the current rules, if you've held that asset for longer than 12 months, you generally receive the 50% CGT discount. That means that only half of the gain becomes taxable. So in our example, only $250 would be added to your taxable income and taxed at your marginal rate. That tax is what we commonly refer to as capital gains tax. There is one important caveat to all of this, and that is if you are lucky enough to have purchased an asset before the 20th of September 1985, then no capital gains tax is generally payable because CGT didn't exist before that date. The proposal moving forward really has two main components. So first of all, they're replacing the 50% discount with an inflation-linked indexation. And secondly, they're introducing a minimum effective 30% tax rate on capital gains. So let's tackle the indexation piece first. Currently, once you hold an asset for more than 12 months, you receive that flat 50% discount regardless of what inflation has been over that time. But under the proposed rules, that flat 50% discount is being scrapped. Instead, your cost base, which is basically what you originally paid for the asset, well, that gets indexed in line with inflation. And this is actually how Australia used to calculate CGT before 1999, before the Howard government introduced the 50% discount. So if we go back to our earlier example, well, you buy your shares for $1,000, you hold them for 5 years, let's say inflation over that time averages 3% per annum, and you then still sell those shares for $1,500. Under the new rules, your index cost base would roughly be $1,160. That means that your taxable gain is approximately $340 instead of the $250 that we had under the current rules. Now, importantly, depending on inflation and investment returns, some investors may actually pay less tax under indexation compared to the current 50% discount. But generally speaking, for higher growth assets over longer periods, many investors are likely to pay a lot more tax. The second part of the proposal is the introduction of a minimum 30% tax rate on capital gains. Now, currently, capital gains are simply taxed at your marginal rate. That means if you retire and your income drops significantly, well, you may strategically sell assets in retirement and pay a much lower rate of tax. Under the proposed rules though, if your effective tax rate on the indexed capital gain would otherwise be below 30%, well, an additional tax applies to bring it up to that minimum effective 30% tax rate. But of course, if your marginal tax rate is already above 30%, then broadly speaking, nothing changes here. The government stated its intention behind this is to reduce the benefit of people delaying asset sales into lower income years, which has been a good strategy. There are some exemptions to this proposal though. So for example, recipients of means tested income support payments, so things like age pension and job seeker, well, they're proposed to be exempt from the minimum tax in the year they realise the gain. The timing here is really important because this is where a lot of people are getting confused. The proposed commencement date is 1 July 2027. And importantly, the current rules still apply to gains accrued up until that date. So if you already own assets before 1 July 2027, the growth that occurs up to that point still falls under the existing 50% discount rules. It's only gains accruing after 1 July 2027, which would fall under this new proposed system. And yes, this applies to pre-CGT assets as well. That is those assets purchased prior to the 20th September 1985. This means that calculating CGT in the future is potentially going to become a bit of a nightmare because you effectively need two separate calculations. You need one under the old rules up until 1 July 2027, and then a second calculation under the new index system after that date, which then raises the obvious question. How do you determine the value of assets as at 1 July 2027? For shares, that's relatively easy because they are basically priced daily. Property, on the other hand, is a different story. The government has proposed two methods. So first of all, you can obtain a professional valuation as at 1 July 2027, or secondly, use an ATO apportionment formula that estimates the value based on the asset's growth over time. The ATO is expected to provide basically a tool and further guidance to be able to do this. But importantly, gains accrued on pre-September 1985 assets will still remain exempt up until that 1 July 2027. The good news is that your principal place of residence exemption still remains intact. There are also no proposed changes to the 6-year absence rule, and the small business CGT concessions are remaining as they are, well, at least for now. The government has also proposed carve-outs for eligible new builds in an attempt to encourage additional housing supply. If you invest in an eligible new build, you can continue accessing both the negative gearing benefits and also choose between the current 50% CGT discount or this new index cost-based system. Now, realistically, unless inflation is extremely high or investment returns are very low, many investors would probably still choose the 50% discount option. But importantly, this exemption is specifically targeted at projects that genuinely increase the housing supply. So that means that simple renovations, well, they generally won't qualify. And replacing one house with another one also generally won't qualify. The proposal really is targeted towards developments that increase the number of dwellings available. And no, if someone else built the house and you buy it off them, you generally do not retain those concessions. If these CGT changes combine with the proposed negative gearing changes, I think that one of the biggest implications is that investors will increasingly reconsider the structure which they invest through. Family trust is likely not going to be one of them, and you'll know why when I do the deep dive into those changes. But I do think more investors will turn to structures like companies and investment bonds. The company was traditionally not a good place for investors to hold growth assets, and particularly leveraged growth assets, because it doesn't have the 50% CGT discount and you can't get those negative gearing benefits at your high marginal tax rates. But companies definitely do have some advantages. They've got a maximum 30% tax rate, they've got the ability to retain earnings, and they've got access to franking credits. And those features suddenly become a lot more attractive if these reforms proceed. The other structure that's likely to get a lot of attention moving forward is investment bonds. Investment bonds also broadly operate within a maximum 30% tax environment, and depending on the underlying investments and the tax paid within the structure, that effective tax rate can sometimes be significantly less than 30%. I've personally liked investment bonds for a long time now because they have a myriad of benefits under the right circumstances. But I suspect they will become much more popular if these changes go ahead. I've already done a deep dive previously on investment bonds, so I'll link that in the description box below. If these proposed changes go through, they would materially increase the effective tax burden on long-term capital growth assets in Australia, and we would actually have some of the world's highest capital gains tax. This is a bit ironic because the budget was meant to help, not hinder young Australians, but they've got the longest investment time frame, so they're going to feel this the most. Combine these CGT changes with the proposed negative gearing changes, and these could really reshape, well, the structures that we invest through, the strategies that we implement, and even the assets that investors prefer moving forward. Whether you agree or disagree with these changes, well, that's completely up to you. Of course, we're all entitled to our own opinions and perspectives. But regardless of the tax system, the core principles of investing still remain exactly the same, and that is you need to buy quality assets, hold them for the long term, and do that consistently. This underlying principle hasn't changed. However, the nuance around how we structure and manage investments, well, that might change. But fundamentals of building wealth still remain incredibly important. But that's it for me today, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one.